Welcome back here to Drew and Brandon Talking Sports. Brandon, Monday, Super Bowl, teams announced. First thing I want to ask you is how excited are you for this matchup? Because I think it's just not what people expected. So, how excited are you?
Yeah, no, I mean, we talked about it on the last episode where I said the best matchup would be Chiefs Rams, at least in my opinion, excitement wise. Um, this probably is, if it wasn't going to be the Chiefs, obviously, I would rather have it be Rams Bengals than Bengals Niners, in my opinion. You still have a lot of stars on the Rams side. We've known them the last couple of years. Obviously, they were in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. The Bengals obviously still have a lot of hype, not as much as the Chiefs, obviously, but it's not the worst possibility for excitement wise. Even game wise, it's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst, at least in my opinion. I definitely like having the Rams and the Bengals than the Niners, in my opinion.
So, this is probably the matchup I was least excited for. It just comes down to I don't think the Bengals are that exciting as a Super Bowl team. I think they were exciting as a playoff team. Obviously, Burrow in essentially pretty much his 21st start or whatever. Chase as probably the most dominant rookie wide receiver we've seen over the course of a whole single season. Zach Taylor, a coach that was on the hot seat, revives his career and puts out a good case for coach of the year. Probably not going to get it, but a good he had a good case for it. A super exciting roster, a young roster, a team that was ready to potentially take over as the new dominant AFC North team. But as a Super Bowl team, I think they're just a little early. I just to me they kind of felt like the Denver Nuggets or a team like that where it's like they're really really good and they can make it pretty far in a conference that's really competitive, but they felt a year early. They felt like they need a couple more years to marinate before they're really ready to make a Super Bowl, and I was obviously wrong about that. I mean, they end up upsetting the Chiefs, but just as a pure matchup, I just don't find Bengals Rams to be that exciting. And the Rams, I don't know, something about Stafford just doesn't really excite me too much. I know he just got traded from Detroit and all that, but I feel like I don't need to watch Stafford win the Super Bowl to know what he is. He's a probably around at best the seventh best quarterback, at worst the 13th. He's in that tier, whatever tier you want to have that be, whether that's like your second tier or your third tier. He's somewhere in there. McVay is a top four head coach perennially. Every single year, he's anywhere from 1 to 4 probably. Especially once Belichick retires, you're gonna have him 1 to 4. Ramsey and Donald are arguably the two best defensive players in the league. I mean, maybe not this year, but historically, you could legit make that argument. I feel like I know what this team is, and it is exciting because you have a lot of star players, but I don't know. Something about me dislikes the Niners a little bit more. But to me, the real issue with this Super Bowl matchup is the Bengals. To me, they're not exciting. I feel like the ratings are going to be not necessarily down. Like, they may still go up, but they may not go up at the rate at which the NFL would expect. Or maybe they're not expecting a lot. Maybe it's just, I just don't think the ratings are going to be what they would have been had it been, Chiefs Rams, or like a Chiefs Cowboys, or like a Patriots Cowboys or something like that. Like a big time matchup is just not going to be that, but it is still a Super Bowl, so I'm excited for it. But it is probably the matchup I did not want.
Yeah, and just quickly, I mean, on ratings wise, over the last ever since 2010, it's been over 100 million every single year, except for New England, LA. 2019 it was 98 million, so obviously that's pretty close. And then last year it was 91 million. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what the numbers are. I mean, I would agree. I mean, the Rams, even though they're in LA, they're, I mean, as you saw if you watched that game last night, it was probably 80% Niner fans, 75% Niner fans, whatever it was. It was clearly the majority was in the Niners part. And then the Bengals, obviously, they're just not a big market and they don't have a huge following, I guess, outside Cincinnati. And even then, it's still somewhat questionable. So, yeah, I don't expect the ratings. Obviously, they're going to be huge. It's a Super Bowl. Everyone's going to watch it. It's no question. But, um, you know, in terms of it reaching the ratings that have been kind of the custom and the standard over the last 15 years or 10 years or whatever it was. It's probably not going to reach that, but I guess we'll see. But obviously, we'll be watching. If you're a true football fan, even if you're not even really a true football fan, you're still going to watch. But I would expect that there's definitely portions of the country that most years maybe they'd watch if it was a Brady or a Mahomes or someone like that, but or if it was like a New York team or something. But with it being these two teams, I would say that there's probably a portion of people that would probably just not watch it.
Yeah, but so I guess for me, it's probably the matchup I least wanted, and for you, it's probably the one you wanted the third most. I'd assume. Would you prefer Chiefs Niners over Bengals Rams?
Well, I would say honestly, probably yes, because one, it's a matchup of only a couple years ago. You get to see Mahomes play. You get to see the Niners, even though I don't love them, like to watch them, and like I really don't like watching their team to be honest. Just because of Garoppolo, just because again, I just don't think he's that good. I liked watching Debo. I like watching them, play offense, but I just don't think Garoppolo's that good. And I think in the Super Bowl, it's just tough to have a quarterback who's just like not that good to play. Like you need, like I said, you need to have a 2000 Ravens defense, 2015 Broncos defense. Like then it's at least somewhat interesting, especially if you're going into Mahomes. But that would be more interesting. I mean, Chiefs would be three times, 3 years in a row, and it would be a rematch of a Super Bowl that was played only a couple years ago. So I think that would be better.
Gotcha. I think this matchup has potential to be a weird matchup in a way that in 7 years we look back, and these may be some pretty bad teams. The Rams, I don't think I have to talk about why this would be a bad team in 7 years. We've got a lot of players either in their prime or slowly getting out of their prime, and they just have no draft pick capital for the future. At least for the short, immediate future, they really just don't have anything. So I think this is a team in 7 years we look back and they're tanking hard, you know, as they're starting to slowly get more and more draft picks back, they start to tank. And the Bengals, I mean, I'm not going to say they're a bad team in 7 years, but I will say they're a bad franchise historically. And if they were to ever lose Burrow, or Burrow for some reason has some injury, or it just doesn't work out in Cincy, then this is a team that I would expect to not work out. So I think this has potential to be a matchup that we look back in 7 to 10 years and just scratch our heads at how did this even happen. I think there are some matchups in the NFL that in Super Bowls that happen like that. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just something to note. But
Well, while I agree with the Rams part, I think the Bengals part's different. Obviously, they haven't had a great organization, but if Burrow is the real deal, like a real franchise quarterback, which you're way more on the board than I am, which I now obviously have to turn just because of what he's done on the field. But a quarterback like that can change a franchise. Like an example at least comes to mind is like the Saints. Like they were never a great organization all those years. They had a couple winning seasons, but for the most part, they were pretty average or below average. And then you get Drew Brees, obviously you get Sean Payton as well, but you get those two guys to come together, and now all of a sudden they're one of the best organizations in the league. So I think it does matter. Now Zach Taylor before this year was honestly close to being on the hot seat, so maybe he really is this good of a coach, and he just needed a healthy Burrow, or it's maybe a little bit lucky. I guess we'll see in the next 2 years. But if Burrow really is that real guy, I think it can flip an organization, even one as bad as Cincinnati's been for 30 years now.
I agree with that. I just think since he has to be willing to spend money, I think there was a period in which in New Orleans had three back-to-back-to-back 7 and 9 years. I'm not saying that's a problem with the organization necessarily, but I will say, even though when you have a quarterback and you have a coach, I'm not sure about Zach Taylor, by the way. If you held a gun to my head and said, is he going to be the coach here for the next 8 years? I would say no, by the way. But I think they need to be willing to spend money. I don't think this roster is complete enough to compete for Super Bowls long term and like consecutive back to back to back to back. I don't think this is a roster that's going to be here every single year. Whereas I think the Chiefs are going to be here every single year. I think they're going to be in AFC divisional round every single year. Rams, if they're not old, they're going to be here every single year. I don't think that Bengals roster is quite there yet. So I think the Bengals need to be ready to spend some money, which they really haven't done historically. But if they could do that, then yeah, I mean, I could see it. But I want to see them spend money. I want to see Burrow be happy with the organization, which, I mean, he is now, but I want to see it happen down the road. But anyways, yeah. But I guess we should probably talk about the conference championship games, which we haven't talked about yet. We can start Bengals Chiefs because I think that's the upset. That is the upset. Bengals end up winning 27-24. Now, I'll let you have your opening take. It can be whatever you want. I'm going to start with mine. And, I like to blame. And so I'm going to pick one person that if I had to blame on the Chiefs, who would I blame? And I think when you can only blame one person, it has to be the quarterback. And so I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes. I think Mahomes just played a poor game. I'll pull up the stats on the screen for you guys. But 26 for 39, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. I just don't think there's an excuse to lose to this team. I think you're too talented on paper. Even though the Bengals have Chase, they have Higgins, they have Boyd. You still have Kelsey and Hill, which I think I think I'd still rather have that. I'd rather have the Chiefs offense than the Bengals offense if you take the quarterback out of the situation. I still think I'd go with the Chiefs offense, even especially if you have like Andy Reid as your head coach, and Bieniemy as a very solid offensive coordinator. I find it really hard not to blame Mahomes here. I think I didn't like the overtime drive. To me, was that a necessary pass to Hill? Did you need that? To me in overtime, you're not in a time crunch or anything. I think that's a really risky ball and essentially double coverage. I mean, I can see why he would throw that, but you're testing probably, one of the most underrated, if not potentially maybe even one of the best free safeties in the league, and Jesse Bates. And he makes a perfect play on the ball. And it really would have helped Hill if he had been maybe a few inches taller in that case. I think that's probably a catch. But, that's one of Hill's weaknesses is he's not 6'3", Jamar Chase or Mike Evans or whatever. He's, 5'10", speedster Tyreek Hill. I thought that was a questionable call. I thought it was a questionable throw. And obviously it ended up not working out for the Chiefs. And overall, just in the whole game, I think Mahomes, you could clearly see him kind of show some of these things that maybe people questioned coming out of the draft, which was just the lack of awareness, the lack of, I should just take this sack, or I should just throw this ball away, or I need to, be more aware in the situation. You kind of saw some of these weird, like almost Josh Allen moments earlier in his career when he would just do crazy things instead of just play smart football. That fumble almost cost them at the end of the game. That was a play that I was like, wow. My jaw dropped when I saw the ball get loose. I saw the Chiefs recover it, and I'm like, okay, honestly, I think that's game. Like, I thought that if it goes into overtime, the Chiefs are going to win, and the Bengals needed to make that play. They needed to jump on that ball to win the game. Obviously not. I blame Mahomes. I think he just played a very uncharacteristic game. That's what I would call it.
Yeah, I would say that this is Mahomes's. I could say this is the first game that he has lost for his team in a playoff situation. 2018 against the Patriots, like he didn't lose that game. The Patriots just won that game. The Super Bowl last year, like he did everything he possibly could to try and score points and do anything for that team. They had zero offensive line and just nothing was going their way. Like I can't blame that one on him, but this one you can. The first half was, perfect. Except for the final drive of the first half, it was perfect. 3 straight touchdowns, went right up and down the field. The defense was playing great. I still give credit to the defense, even though obviously they gave up 27 points. Like, they were making life hard, and the Chiefs' offense in the second half, it seemed like that last play of the first half just resonated not just with the offense, but also with the defense. Like they lost the momentum that they had, and then as soon as the offense lost everything they had, and they were going 3 and out, defense was on the field every 2 minutes. It just seems like it wore them down too. But it's from that drive at the end of the first half, just even though 3 points may seem a little seem like whatever, but. And especially at that point, you're still up 21-3. You still dominated the first half. Like, it's like, all right, you didn't get 3 points. It still sucks, and it obviously was crucial. But at that time, you're still thinking, all right, we get the ball at the start of the second half. We can still get 3 points, and we somewhat make up for it. But it just turned out to be the death of them, honestly. Them not getting that, they started off the second half. They just started off terribly, and that's for some reason for a team like this, a championship level team like this, with a coach like that and a quarterback like that, you wouldn't expect that to jolt them the way that it did. But for some reason it did, and Mahomes just played terrible in the second half. The first pick was an awful pick. Even if the defensive lineman who didn't pick it off didn't catch it, there was a guy right behind him. So I don't know who Mahomes was throwing that ball to, but that was getting picked no matter who caught it for the Bengals. Obviously, that led to a touchdown right away. So that's 7 points that the offense gave up right there. Just they just made mistakes that we don't see the Chiefs make, and Mahomes was missing throws down. Also, to be fair, Kelsey dropped a couple balls. I think Hill dropped one or two balls. So they were they just played worse in the second half than they did in the first half. It almost reminded me of the way they played the first couple weeks of the season. That's almost what it reminded me of. So just yeah, I was definitely shocked that they lost. I really didn't believe that they were going to lose, especially going into overtime to get the ball first. I still never thought they were going to lose until that pick. And to be fair, he should have been picked, two throws before that or whatever it was when he threw 5 yards behind the receiver and Eli Apple almost picked it off. So yeah, I completely agree. It's totally Mahomes' fault. No one else to blame but him.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I don't know if I would say nobody else to blame but him, but if I had to pick one person, yeah, it is for sure Mahomes. Yeah, I just think that's what it is, and it's unfortunate. I don't know if I would have liked to see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl for pure matchup sake. We talked about it. I would, but I was rooting for the Bengals that game. I think it's just kind of human nature to root for the underdog in a way. But even then, I mean, I'm with you. I just could not envision the Bengals winning this game. I just couldn't. All the way up until I all the way up until it was a chip shot field goal. I just could not envision the Bengals actually winning this game. It's still kind of crazy to me that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs lost to the Bengals.
And
Yeah, it is just crazy. I mean,
And even though I mentioned the final drive of the first half of the Chiefs, them obviously not scoring, really it was the drive before. I mean, the Bengals still weren't doing anything. They were at their own 43-yard line. They got an 18-yard pass. So then it's 2-minute warning. They go minus 2 yard rush. So they're second and 12 at Kansas City 41. Still really not doing anything. I mean, again, that 18-yard pass was like probably their biggest play of the game at that point. And they get a screen pass, just a normal screen pass, and it goes for 41 yards, breaks a couple tackles, runs, past some guys. Like, that was just like when that play happened, I was like, all right, I mean, like all right, that's like a weird touchdown that they just got. And gives them some life, but even still, 21-10. You have a minute and 5 seconds left. We obviously saw Mahomes get a field goal in 13 seconds. So there's no doubt in my mind they're at least getting points. But then obviously they don't get points. So that's a 7 point swing right there, which obviously turned out to be even more of a swing because the rest of the game went. But it's just crazy to think that like from that play, that screen pass that went for a touchdown to them not scoring. Again, them not scoring there was Mahomes' fault because you had 5 seconds left, no timeouts. You have to throw it into the end zone. So I just don't know what he was thinking. People were saying that Tyreek should have ran out of bounds. I don't think you could blame it on him. There's 2 seconds left. Yeah, if he's really thinking like that, he could have ran out of bounds, but you can't blame it on him for that. That's on Mahomes. You can't throw a ball that's not in the end zone with, by the time he actually threw the ball, there was 2 or 3 seconds left. So that's on him. Again, another, blame to put on him is that. So yeah, just it's still crazy to me that, they lost that game. Up 21-3 at home in the playoffs with Mahomes. Like that's if you were to tell someone that a week ago, it's just automatic that they were winning that game. And honestly, it looked like it was going to be a blowout. It looked like it could have been 42-16 or whatever. So it's still crazy.
yeah, no, it is crazy, and I think if you're a Buffalo fan, you got to be mad. I mean, you got to be like really pissed at yourself. Not, I mean, you got to be pissed at your team. I mean, you were so close to beating the Chiefs, and I know the Bengals beat the Chiefs, but I mean, it's not like you lost to the Chiefs. You're going to go out and win it all. You lost to the Chiefs. You lost in the next round to the Bengals. I mean, and I'm not saying you really could have done anything necessarily, but I mean that defense just had to make one stop really against Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, but it is really unfortunate that if you're a Buffalo fan, you're thinking this was our year, and now a team that went 4-12 is now in the Super Bowl instead of us, and that should probably be us. That should probably be the Buffalo Bills. I think it's a real disheartener for the Buffalo Bills, and I guess other teams too. I mean, the Titans, they probably should have beaten the Bengals. I mean, if Tannehill didn't play so poorly, and I think now this is when you really, especially now that the Bengals beat the Chiefs, as a Titans fan, you're really looking at Tannehill and saying, all right, there's just no way. It's just not going to get done. If we can't beat the Bengals, I know the Bengals just beat the Chiefs, but you got to feel bad that, you really should have been in that AFC Championship game against a Mahomes who didn't have a good week. You should have been in that game, and you weren't because Tannehill. So I think
Yeah,
there's a few
and
teams in the AFC that really really you're just having a bad week. So
Yeah, and again, we talked about it before the playoffs started that the schedule worked out in favor for the Bengals if they were to win, and it did. I mean, they didn't have to play the Chiefs or the Bills until obviously this game. So if you're a Bills fan, even though the Chiefs won that game as well, you could still look at it as a Chiefs fan, and be like, you know, if like you have to play that game in the divisional round, and then it's only to the AFC Championship where you're going into a team that's for sure talented. But again, if you look at the AFC, they're not the most talented team out there. They're just not. Even though they beat the Chiefs and they're going to the Super Bowl, they're not the best team in the AFC. So you for sure have to be looking at it as definitely as a Bills fan, thinking if we the luck of the draw, if we could have played, not the Chiefs in the second round or not played whoever, like we could have played them in the championship game or whoever made it to the championship game without having to face the Chiefs, you're thinking so differently about how the playoffs would go. So yeah, I mean the schedule in this case obviously just works out for the Bengals. And again, they had to play the Bills or the Chiefs, a round ago. I don't think they're winning that game. Now, obviously, it could be different. You could play a much better game. The Chiefs, whatever. But I don't think they're winning against the Bills or the Chiefs if it's a round ago. But who knows? I mean, maybe they do, but in my mind, I don't think they would have.
I mean, I would agree and disagree with that. I would say, I mean, I'm not going to say they wouldn't beat the Chiefs a round ago or the Bills a round ago, but I would say I don't think they're beating the Bills and the Chiefs. I think you can win one of those games, but with a team that's not as dominant on paper as as some other teams in the league, it would be really tough to go on the road in a cold, East Rutherford and beat Buffalo, and then go on the road and beat the Chiefs in probably the hardest place to play in the league. Can you do that back to back? Probably not. So I think, yeah, you kind of did get a little bit lucky, but I mean, I'm not trying to take away anything from the Bengals. And as a Patriots fan, I understand this. You need to get lucky to win Super Bowls. That's just how it is. You need to find breaks. If you don't get any breaks, you're not going to win. It doesn't matter how good your team is. If you don't get a couple breaks here and there, whether it's, a self-induced break or whatever you want to call it, like getting the 1 seed and getting the bye, or a little bit of a lucky break, like, getting to play only the Chiefs in the conference championship and getting a relatively easy road in, Las Vegas and then Tennessee. That it's just no matter what you need breaks, and I think the Bengals got one. I think the Rams kind of got a break too. I mean, you can look at some breaks in the regular season they got. They're pretty healthy, and that is a break. They also got a Cardinals team that was so deteriorated in Wild Card Weekend that not a free week, but it's easier than a lot of other matchups were. So that's just how it works, and you need breaks to be in the Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl. So.
Yeah, but like we said, the Bengals won 27-24. They'll be in the Super Bowl. It's still crazy to kind of think about, but and it's also just one quick thing before we probably move to the next game. But it's just crazy to think, the Bengals are in the Super Bowl. We haven't even seen them get to an AFC Championship game, I guess, since '88. So I mean, obviously, way before we were born. It's just like crazy to think. Because you always just think of dominant teams, and it's like they're always in the playoffs, they're always reaching championship games. And usually, if that lesser team, the Jaguars against the Patriots, they usually don't win. Even if they get there, they're usually not winning and advancing to the Super Bowl. But like you look at the Bengals, like it's really the first time, kind of like a little while, I could really think of like an organization like that that just had like zero success and so many failures that was able to beat not only just a normal team, but a team that's probably the most dominant team over the last 3 years now. So it is crazy to think that they were actually able to win this game and actually get to the Super Bowl, because again, like I said, in the previous years just hasn't been the case.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say, and 95% of football fans, whether they're casual or hardcore or whatever, probably had, outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, had the Bengals as fourth in the division, maybe even higher than 95%. I mean, you probably had either Baltimore or Cleveland winning the division. You probably had whichever one of those two isn't in second. You probably had the Steelers third. You probably had the Bengals fourth. And the Bengals win the division or are in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's just crazy. That just goes on to show that, to me, football is just a much more variable sport than any other league in the four major leagues. I think baseball can be pretty variable at times, and the NHL can for sure. But football, to me, just reigns supreme in the unpredictability of it. And basketball is clearly the complete opposite, which is you pretty much know going into the season that there are only 4 teams who have a shot, and one of those probably gets injured, One of them probably underachieves, and then the other two are probably in the finals. That's pretty much how it works every single year. So
Yeah.
I think it's cool in the NFL that a team like the Bengals that was predicted to go probably 4-13 by most people is goes 10-7 or whatever and is now in the Super Bowl. So yeah, but we'll move over to the other game. Another pretty exciting game. I mean, I think we got a pretty solid round of conference championship games. No, I don't think we got any necessarily all-timer games, but these are two very good games. Maybe it's an all-timer if you're a Bengals fan, but the Rams and the 49ers end up facing off, and the Rams end up pulling off the upset, or not the upset, but they end up pulling out the W, 20-17. I guess if I had to blame, no, I don't think I'm going to blame anybody for on either side, but I mean, I think this is another example of why we saw the 49ers trade up, use so much draft capital, get to number 3, and either take Mac Jones or Trey Lance. They end up taking Trey Lance. Garoppolo is a good quarterback. I mean, he's anywhere from probably the 11th best quarterback to the 16th best quarterback. He's probably in that neighborhood. Maybe you have him slightly lower than 16. Maybe if he's on a hot streak, you have him slightly higher than 11. But he's probably in that third or fourth tier of quarterbacks. Now, it's really good. He's a good quarterback, and he can get you into the playoffs. He can win you any, individual football game. But is he good enough to go on a 4-game winning streak in the playoffs against some of the NFL's best offenses and defenses, where you're either playing an elite defense or you're playing an elite quarterback every single week? There's no playoff teams except for, a few exceptions that don't have either an elite defense or an elite quarterback. Is Jimmy Garoppolo good enough to get you on a 4-game winning streak against those quality of teams? I mean, evidence would show no. So I think this is an example where you can look back and say, had Garoppolo been just slightly better, especially late in the game, the 49ers are probably moving on to the Super Bowl. And now I'm not telling you that they should move off Garoppolo for next season. I don't know Trey Lance's development at all yet. And I do think Garoppolo is a really, really good quarterback. And I think I like him more than most. But this is clearly an example of why the 49ers felt like they had to make the move up to 3 and take a quarterback that they can trust long term to get them over the hump, because they just clearly don't believe in Garoppolo to be able to do exactly that. And I think this game was proof of it.
Yeah, if there was blame to put anywhere, I'd put some on Garoppolo, but honestly, I'm definitely looking at Kyle Shanahan, because you know what you're going to get with Jimmy Garoppolo. You're not looking at him the way you'd look at Mahomes, which is why you can blame Mahomes, because he is the best quarterback in the league. So when he plays not up to his expectations and for sure lower than that, then you could put the blame on him. But at the same time, Garoppolo, I was never expecting him to win this game or play amazing, never make a mistake in this game. So even though I obviously can put some blame on him, because there was for sure times where he didn't look good, he was missing throws. Obviously got picked at the end of the game to seal it, and that was honestly disgusting to watch. But I definitely put some on Shanahan as well, because you have to know what your quarterback is. There's a time in the game, right? By the time the Rams got to 14 points to make it 17-14, there was 13 minutes and 30 seconds left in the game. So going into the fourth quarter, you're up 17-7. Obviously Garoppolo has a blame to play in that, but Shanahan does as well. He's had multiple leads at multiple times in his career. Obviously the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, when he was offensive coordinator, obviously the Falcons against the Patriots. Like, it just seems like when he has leads, no matter who the quarterback is, because they had Matt Ryan then, like, he just can't seem to hold it. Just what the play calling is different. The plays aren't working the way that they usually worked in the first half or just different games in the season. So I don't know what that problem is, but it's clearly a problem. It's happened multiple times on the biggest stages that you could ask for. But the Rams tried to give this one away. I mean, from the interception at the goal line, basically, from the second drive of the game by Stafford, which that just wasn't a good pass, to be honest. It got tipped up, obviously, but that was contested. There was no way Kupp was going to catch that. I believe it was the Cooper Kupp. They missed a 54-yard field goal. Now it's a 54-yard field goal, obviously not automatic, but still 3 points that are out there. The going forward on fourth down at the San Francisco 43, you don't get that. Obviously, that's a huge play. I mean, just so many the challenges that McVay had. Like, if the Rams would have lost this game, you would have to look at McVay a lot differently, because he did not coach a good game in this one, I thought. Again, the two challenges, they really weren't close, to be honest, and he challenged both of them. The timeouts, like they instead of taking a delay game, he decides to take a timeout. Like you only had one timeout, or he had two timeouts left at that point, whatever it was, and he decided to take a timeout in the fourth quarter when you were down 10 points. Like that's a lot of coaching mistakes right there. So I think the Rams definitely got lucky to win this game because they were trying to give it to the Niners. But again, the team with the better quarterback did win, no matter what you think of Stafford. He is the better quarterback than Garoppolo. And when it came down to scoring points, touchdown, field goal, and then obviously, they do a couple of kneels to end the game. So when it came down to scoring points and making plays, Stafford stepped up. He didn't play a great game, but he played a good enough game to win this game. And against Jimmy Garoppolo, you need to have just a good enough game. And that's what he did. So even though they tried to give it away like they did last week, they still won the game and they're still going to the Super Bowl. So
Yeah, no, I completely get behind that. I agree. I think Shanahan did not coach a good game. I think McVay, situationally, maybe I think he played a better game than most people would have probably said, and I think he played a better game than you say, but I don't think he played a good game necessarily. I think he tried to, I think he tried to be a coach. He tried to have some smart plays, and I'm not sure they all panned out. Um, Yeah. To me, and I will say these are Shanahan and McVay are two top 7 head coaches at the very least in the NFL. And it kind of stinks about head coaching that we're kind of going down this, every head coach is pretty much a glorified coordinator at this point, or top head coach. And I don't think there's many head coaches that are great situationally and have great awareness when it comes to, challenging and timeout usage and clock management. I feel like in over the course of the past 20 years since I've been alive, we've seen that go down compared to get better, which I would have expected it to get better. But I think what we've seen is people would rather have the offensive wizard at their head coach than the guy who is more of the overseer of everything and the general. But and I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's an observation that I've made. Now, the question I have for you is, out of the two Super Bowl teams, which team do you think has a better quarterback?
yeah, I mean, I think that's a real question. The quarterback that's playing better is Burrow, but at the same time, well, it's hard to say I trust Matt Stafford, but I mean, the more experience, the better coach. So I think you could put him in better situations offensively, which obviously is the case with him being in LA. But just to answer it straight up, like who would I rather have, or who's the better quarterback, like for this game?
I mean, I think those are the same answer, or the same question.
Well, I think that could be different. I mean, if I think
Who would you
I
rather
think in
have for this
different.
game? Who would you rather have?
Who would I rather have? I'd rather have Matt Stafford for this game. But who I think's the better quarterback? I think Joe Burrow is the better quarterback.
To me, though, that's the same answer. I think Burrow is the better quarterback from now on. I just think he is, and I think this year he probably even had a better year. I mean, you could make that argument, especially when you include playoffs. Now, I think Burrow's the better quarterback from now on. I think I'd rather have him for this game. I trust him more for this game. I think the swagger that he brings, I think is legit. I think it's almost tangible at this point. I think you can legitimately feel the impact he's had on this team. And I also think he's just a better quarterback than Stafford on the field as well. I think he has more potential to have a bigger game. I think the gap in arm strength, I don't know that there is one. I mean, Stafford has been known to have a great arm, but I mean, if Burrow has a weaker arm than Stafford, I don't think it's by much. I think he has a better deep ball than Stafford. I think he's a more consistent quarterback than Stafford. The only thing I think he's worse at than Stafford is those kind of just plays that rookies or younger quarterbacks make that just make you scratch your head. I think he's probably going to have more of those in this game than Stafford, but I'm betting on the fact that it's not like some crazy stuff where Josh Allen just hucks the ball over the back of his shoulder and hopes somebody picks up the ball. As long as it's not something crazy like that, then I'm fine. Which I don't think. I think Burrow will be situationally aware enough for this game that I would much prefer him over Stafford. I'm going to go that I would rather have Burrow for this game, and I would rather have Burrow for the rest of their careers. I'd rather have Burrow for just next year. There's not a situation in which I'm taking Stafford over Burrow, so I'm that much on the Burrow train. I think I'd rather have Burrow for this game. Said it, so yeah.
Well, the reason I said they're different questions is because, I mean, you have two guys, and one guy could be the more talented guy and the better guy, but at the same time, he could be more mistake prone, could make, go for the, heroic plays and try and do things that are out of his reach, while the other guy's more safe, and he's going to make the right call at the same, also. So I think they are two different questions, even if they have similarities to them, but. Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that Burrow is the better quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But I think I just like Stafford a little bit more. Again, Burrow hasn't had a bad game in a while. I mean, when's the last time he had a bad game? It's been a couple weeks, if not a month plus. It's just someone to be that young and to put this amount of good games together in the stages that he's in, it is going to prove to me if he can put another really good performance together, then yeah, clearly he's just built for it. But like, it's just hard to trust that, knowing that again, like you said, like this is basically his rookie year. He's only played 21 games, 22, whatever it is, so it's just hard to trust that right now. Unless you have total trust in him, which I think you do. Again, for that reason, I would probably say Stafford. Even though I don't trust him that much more, I think I trust him just a little bit more.
All right. Let's just say, okay. Are you still taking Herbert over Burrow for the rest of their careers, by the way?
Um, I would say, probably yes. I'll say yes.
I hate Herbert fans. I really do. Like, I don't understand. What does Burrow need to win? What if, let's say Burrow wins this game 27-24. He has a good game. Two
It's
touchdowns,
nothing
no
that
picks.
it's nothing that Burrow
It's
like
nothing that Burrow can do, exactly, because,
no. It's
wow,
nothing that
Herbert
Burrow.
has.
It's nothing that Burrow isn't doing. It's just that I think Herbert really has the ability. Not saying Burrow doesn't. Everything that I'm saying, I'm not saying that Burrow can't do. I'm just saying that what I think of Herbert, I just think of him so highly and so talented that um, I just think he can be better and probably will be better at the end of the day. Now, Burrow, look, he's a great quarterback, and I think if they just get him some offensive line help, for sure, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, maybe if not the best quarterback in the league, because he has the weapons, obviously has the ability and talent, and if he could just get some protection, obviously he's going to be better. But Herbert, like I feel like he has that. I just feel like he has it. Now this year, just obviously, he's in a tougher division. At least this year it was because every single team, because the Steelers, like even though they made the playoffs, like come on, it's the Steelers, the Browns, they were a mess this year. Obviously, the Ravens had so many injuries. Normal year, for sure, that probably is a tougher division. Even though I think the AFC West is probably right there, to be honest,
I mean,
especially if the
barring Aaron
Broncos get
Rodgers, yeah.
if the Broncos get a quarterback, they're there because the Raiders, like I said, I've said it all year. They play one possession games every single game. Obviously, the Chiefs, and then like I said, the Broncos if they get a quarterback. So they're probably pretty comparable. The Steelers will for sure drop off this year because of no Big Ben. There's no way Haskins or
But
Mason Rudolph is going to replace
but
that. But
let me just let me intervene here because I just don't see how anything. I don't see how any of this has to do with who would you rather have for the rest of their career, Burrow or Herbert.
no, I was just saying in terms of the competition that they're playing right now. I think that Herbert this year, just like if he was in the AFC North, if they just switched teams, let's say, I think Herbert could have led them to 10-7, maybe even 11-6. And then when we get to the playoffs, we would have seen what happened. But with him being on the Chargers and the division that they were in and the tough, difficulties that they had to deal with in that division, I think it just like if he made the playoffs, I would have loved to see what happens. You know what? Because if he made the playoffs, he would have been playing the Bengals, correct? I believe the Chargers would have played the Bengals.
They
Um,
either would have played the Bengals or maybe the Raiders again. Had the Raiders gone for the tie, I'm not really too
well, they
sure.
wouldn't have played the Raiders because they both would have been wild card teams. But
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
I guess maybe they could have played Kansas City, but I think they would have beat the Raiders. So I'm assuming they would have a tiebreaker or whatever. But let's just say, whatever. They play the Bengals, whatever. They make the playoffs. I would have liked to see how that would have gone. I just think that, Herbert, like, I don't know. I just have this affinity toward him, I guess you could say. And again, it's nothing that Burrow can't do or won't do. And I think that they're probably going to be very comparable for the rest of their careers. Now, if Burrow wins this Super Bowl, obviously he's going to have a step up as he would have won a Super Bowl in his second year. But Herbert's never even had the chance to get to the playoffs. So, let's just see what happens when Herbert gets to the playoffs, which I'm going to assume is next year.
To me, I just have a hard time. To me, a lot of the things I like about Burrow are intangibles, and I think it's really important as a quarterback to have those intangibles because, I mean, I'll bring two quarterbacks. I'll compare two quarterbacks who probably are equal tangibly, but clearly one has an advantage intangibly over the other, and that's Mahomes and Rodgers. And you know, arm talent. No, it's personal preference at this point. Who would you rather have, Mahomes or Rodgers? I think a lot of people go Rodgers, a lot of people go Mahomes. Accuracy, I mean, we've seen Rodgers make some insane throws. We've seen Mahomes make some insane throws. But when it comes down to who's more stable in the locker room, who has transformed their franchise more than the other, who do you know you're going to get the same out of every press conference every single week, whether it's win or loss? Who is just going to ride or die for their teammates? Who is, transform their franchise? It's just an intangible. It's a leadership intangible. It's a consistency off the field. It's a lift your teammates up rather than, put them down. It's a we as a team need to get better. I could make some improvements versus, I need this general manager to get me some help other than Devontae Adams, which is not even true. It's, the immunization versus get the vaccine. It's a lot of things to me. And those are all things. I'm not saying that Herbert's going to be similar to Rodgers in that aspect, but I know Burrow is going to be a great leader, and he's already transformed this franchise. The reason I don't think Herbert would take this team to 10-7 in the playoffs and into the Super Bowl is just because I think Burrow was the personality that the Bengals needed to transform their franchise. And if Burrow is that personality, which I think he is, then he will transform this franchise. And hopefully the Bengals, ownership puts money into helping him get a good roster. I mean, I think if they switch teams, I think the Chargers will be in the playoffs as a wild card. I do, and I don't think the Bengals would be. And I'm telling you, I think it'd be, the Bengals are 9-8 or 8-9, and the Chargers are 10-7 or 11-6. I think that's what it would be instead of the other way around. I think while Herbert may have more special arm talent, he may be the bigger guy. He may have the flashier throws. He may be able to stop on a dime and chuck the ball 80 yards down the field, and Burrow maybe can only do that at 60 yards. I think there's something about him on the field that I really like, and I think there's something about him off the field that I clearly prefer over Herbert. And it's not that Herbert has shown anything bad necessarily like Rodgers, but he's really quiet. He has yet to show the leadership capability and ability to transform an organization, and Burrow has. So that's why I prefer Burrow. Yeah, so.
Well, I mean, I think that he is more quiet. Obviously, it's not like Burrow's that loud either. I would say he's probably tends to
I'm
be
not
a
saying
little
he's
bit
loud. I'm just.
No, but that's always been the thing about Herbert, and I've read reports like just like stories or whatever articles about it. Like he is like more shy and quiet, but everyone in the locker room always seems to love him. He is a leader on that team, even if it's not words, it's actions and just him playing on the field and whatever. We don't know what happens in the locker room. I don't expect him to be this huge ego guy or anything like that, but I think he is there for his teammates and everything. But I think he hasn't transformed his franchise obviously to the capability of Burrow because they're in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. But I mean, from the Chargers to go from a franchise quarterback from Phillip Rivers to go straight to him to where he brought him to a 9-8 season this year, like that is still pretty impressive to go straight from that guy to you and still put a year together like that. Where it came down to the final game where, to be honest, your head coach made the mistake. Not saying Herbert didn't have any blame in that game, but if his head coach doesn't make a stupid mistake, you're in the playoffs. So I think it can work both ways. And again, I can't judge Herbert yet until he gets to that situation, until he gets to the playoffs and does what he has to do. Whether it's failure or success, I can't judge him until then because obviously it's not the same. You can't compare someone who's been to the playoffs to someone who's not been into the playoffs because I don't know what Herbert would do.
I mean, am I unfair to say that Herbert has played in one playoff game? Is that unfair?
I think I mean, it's obviously not a playoff game, but I think it's a playoff type game. Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's not labeled as a playoff game, but that literally was, a play-in game. That was a play-in game to get into the wild card. You know what I mean? So I feel like that. I'm not saying Herbert played poorly in it, but and I would agree that Staley probably deserves a lot of blame. But I think you could also argue that Taylor and Staley are on that same tier of head coach where they're a little bit unknown and sometimes they can clearly make some mistakes that make you scratch your head, but they show promise. And I do think the Chargers roster was good enough to make the playoffs this year. I do. Now I think they have some injuries, but Allen.
I mean, they did have arguably the worst run defense almost in NFL history.
But it got better. It got better towards the latter half of the year.
I mean, I
So,
don't know. I'll
I
check
mean,
some
let's
stats
look
on
up the
that,
stats.
but
Let's look up the stats. I can guarantee you statistically it's going to show that they got better in the latter half of the year. Um, I think defensively they were good enough. I mean, you have Bosa, you have Derwin James, you had some other young pieces around there. I mean, obviously you don't have like Melvin Ingram anymore, but offensively you have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, probably arguably the best rookie offensive lineman we've seen in a long time, maybe since Quentin Nelson. I think you had enough around you to make the playoffs. And now, was it a tough division? Yes. Was it an uphill battle? A little bit. But to me, the swagger that Burrow bring to this Bengals team and brings to this Bengals team is just so noticeable. And I don't feel like I have any of that with the Chargers. And I think that means a lot. And it's an off the field thing. It's a little bit of an intangible thing. But I think that's what Herbert fans miss about Herbert. And I could see him becoming like maybe like Kawhi Leonard, who's a guy who's, yes, technically a leader, but when you're the best player on your team or when you're the quarterback of a team, you can't not be a leader. And being a leader does not mean you're a good or bad leader. I mean, Herbert's a leader. I'm not saying he's a bad leader. I'm not saying he's a good leader. I'm saying he's probably in the middle right now. And I'm predicting he's going to be in the bottom half of that compared to where I know Burrow is as good of a leader as I've seen, I've never seen anybody transform this Bengals organization. So that's why I'm putting so much stock into it. So, but yeah, I would go with I would go with Burrow. You go with Herbert. So
well, quickly with two things. One, the Kawhi Leonard comparison. I mean that kind of works more in Herbert's favor because Leonard's a two-time champ. So
no, but
technically that
I
still
guess I'm
kind of
taking the
works.
negatives of it more so. I mean, like yes, but it's the NBA, not the NFL. I guess is I think the leadership is more important in the NFL and the NBA. Let's be honest, the Kawhi Leonard championship he just doesn't have if the Warriors stay healthy, which they fell apart in the finals, which obviously helps out the Raptors. And
Well,
the
hey, I
Spurs
mean,
one, he wasn't a leader on that team, so that's why it didn't matter. I mean, he was a great player for that team, but he didn't have to do any of the leadership. They had Duncan, they had Parker, they had Ginobili, and they had Pop. So he was almost in the perfect situation.
the the one thing, I mean, the injuries thing, like the Warriors thing, like they would have lost. Like if the Bengals didn't have an easier schedule, they potentially could have lost as well. So I think that kind of counteracts itself because that's going back in time and saying if something didn't happen, then it would have been different. So I don't think that, I think the 2014 one, sure, I think it makes sense. Obviously, he wasn't a leader on that team, but he was for sure still a key player. I mean, he was the guy guarding LeBron in that series. Won Finals MVP in that series as well. So whatever. Obviously, I think we can agree to disagree. But the other thing I wanted to say was they gave up 140 yards rushing per game, and over the last 3 games, it was 150.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch those
So
games. I'm just
I
telling you that I
some
think
of
that
those
roster
games,
was good enough.
the good games that they had was like limiting Dalvin Cook to like 94 yards. I think Damian Harris had like 80 yards when they played them. So the good games were, and that's just by one running back. I wasn't even checking the actual team because obviously quarterback, other running backs, whatever. But the good performances towards the end of the season was like 80, 90 yards for the best rusher on the team. So
I mean, the Chargers played the Bengals, and the Chargers ended up winning, and Mixon only rushed for 2.8 yards a carry. That was December 5th. I mean, I'm just cherry picking games right now. I mean, I don't know. I could tell you for sure, at least in my opinion, the run defense got better in the latter half of the year. Now, maybe the last 3 games it wasn't great, but yeah, I mean, I would personally say that since watching that Patriots game, I felt like the Chargers' run defense got better. Statistically, is it backed up? I would assume it's backed up that they went from the 32nd to maybe like the 28th or the 27th best, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just still think that roster was more than good enough to make the wild card. All you needed to do was win one game that you lost, by the way. So
yeah, no, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but again, two of the last 3 games you lost, and like I said, they were giving up 100 and whatever I said yards per game. So it is tough to win when the defense, because not it's different. I'd rather have a worse pass defense than run defense because the worst run defense means that they're they're killing you on the ground. So your guys are getting more tired and they're getting beat down, and they're controlling clock, maintaining clock, keeping their defense fresh, keeping your offense off the field. Passing, you get one pass play, 80 yards, touchdown. Running the ball, if you just keep getting 7, 8, 9 yards every rush and just pounding the ball, obviously you break a couple, like that just kills the defense because almost every single great rushing team, they control the clock. It makes their team way better. I saw with the 2016 Cowboys. They controlled the clock because of the run game, and that's why their defense wasn't good that year, but they played better because they weren't on the field as much. And anytime they get down in the game, they usually didn't come back and win, even though they only lost 3 games that year. But um, it just makes a big difference when you can run the ball like that.
Yeah, I mean, I still would rather have the better pass defense. To me, I think if you don't have a good pass defense, you're just not going to win 4 consecutive playoff games. And I still think that even if you have a bad run defense, if you just commit to stopping the run, I think you can. Now, that doesn't mean you can always stop the run because the games just don't play out like that. But I think, it's easier to stop the run if you dedicate to it than it is to stop the pass if you dedicate to it. So, but yeah, I mean, you can't have an awful either. So, and the Chargers did not have a great run defense. I still think that team was good enough to make the wild card. Is it good enough to beat the Bills and the Chiefs on the road? No, but I don't think the Bengals roster was good enough to do that either. So,
All right. Well, I think that's it from the games. But at the same time, we have a couple new head coach hirings. We still have a couple of vacancies. We have the Saints. We have the Dolphins. We have the Jaguars. I know there's at least one or two more that I'm missing right now. Texans is another one. And I believe there's one more. I don't know why I can't think of the name, but the Vikings. So those are the ones that are left. But the ones that did get hired, I believe there was two. It was Brian Dable to the Giants and Josh McDaniels to the Raiders, which are both official. So I'm assuming you'd want to start with McDaniels to the Raiders because of connections. So I'll just let you go if you want to start with that one.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a loss. McDaniels was the guy that Patriots fans and I guess people around the league would always talk about as he's the next guy up when Bill Belichick decides to call it quits. He had been rumored to be in head coaching, talks for pretty much the past 8 to 10 years. And I think it's a loss. He was the guy that you wanted to grow with Mac Jones. I think you wanted McDaniels and Jones to grow for the next 10 to 15 years. And halfway through that, Belichick calls it quits and McDaniels becomes the head coach. I thought that would have been the case, and obviously it's not the case. I think it's a loss. I'm not sure if he's going to work out in LA or not. I really couldn't tell you. I don't know McDaniels personally, obviously. I could not tell you. So I think it is a loss. But at the same time, I didn't love McDaniels. I liked McDaniels, but I didn't love him. But I mean, there's always a risk of hiring a bad OC, so I think it is a loss for sure. But I do think we could have, if we get lucky, I think we could find somebody better than McDaniels. I think it is possible. Now we obviously lose Ziegler too as a part of that. He's now the GM of the Raiders, and I think that is a big loss too because, I mean, this past draft for the Patriots was better than pretty much the past a lot of drafts for the Patriots, and I think Ziegler had a big part to play in that. At least from what I've heard from local reports and such. So I think that is a loss, and Belichick has not had a good track record as GM, especially in the draft the past 10 years, 9 years. So I think that's a loss. I think it's a loss, but I'm not crushed by it. It does make me wonder. McDaniels really only wanted to go to a job where he thought he knew he had a quarterback. Is Carr that quarterback? I don't know. To me, I think the Raiders are going to be in the play for somebody, whether that's probably not Rodgers, but whether it's Rodgers or whether it's Watson or whether it's somebody we don't know that could be traded. It would surprise me if McDaniels held out for so long just to have Derek Carr. That would surprise me. Because he essentially could have continued to hold out and he would have been able to get a better quarterback than Carr, in my opinion. So I think they're going to be in the play for something. Also, it makes me wonder, how long is Belichick going to coach? To me, if McDaniels is leaving that insinuates that Belichick's going to be here for the next 5+ years. It also makes me wonder, what does McDaniels think of Mac Jones? Because if McDaniels loved Mac Jones, then I don't know, maybe don't you think McDaniels would have liked to stick around and see it out? And if Belichick calls it quits earlier than expected, then he's got a really good young quarterback as well as a stable organization. I don't know. It makes me wonder. But overall, for the Raiders themselves, do I like the hiring? Yeah, I like it. I mean, I would have preferred Jim Harbaugh, obviously. And if Harbaugh was prepared to take that offering, then I think it's stupid that you hired McDaniels over Harbaugh. But I like the hiring
Well,
overall.
yeah, I mean, clearly he wasn't going to take it or whatever, whichever side didn't want to give in or whatever. But yeah, he would have been the for sure, top choice. But I mean, yeah, I think I kind of in the middle, I guess I should say. Obviously the last time he was a head coach, a real head coach, was with the Broncos, a decade ago. So it's been a long time, but obviously working under Belichick with the Patriots and everything, he's obviously has the ability to take the job. But yeah, I mean, Ziegler's already non-committal on Derek Carr being their quarterback for the future. So I think he would stay for this year. And I don't exactly know his contract situation. I think he's a free agent um, after this year, I believe. So I guess you could see after that. But yeah, I think obviously you always want to go to a head coach or a team that has like a quarterback, whether it's on a rookie contract or he already has his contract and he is a top 7 quarterback, top 5 quarterback. Obviously, that's the dream job. So I don't know if he was waiting for this one or he does like Derek Carr and he wants to go with him, or they have a plan for someone else. But yeah, I think it's okay. The Raiders they're kind of in the middle because of the quarterback situation. But even if they had a improved quarterback, I think they'd be a pretty good team. Depending on who that quarterback would be. But again, McDaniel's that guy. I mean, from all the Patriots stuff and everything, it doesn't seem like he's the most creative offensive mind. So would he be calling plays? I would assume he would, unless he brings someone on that is like an understudy or someone that he really trusts to call plays. I don't know. Nothing's been announced yet. But if he's the one calling plays, then, I think there's definitely some questions there unless he improves a lot on that. But I think it's okay. I don't have a problem with it. And I guess we'll see what happens over the next, 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it's just surprising to me because I think McDaniels is no idiot, and I think he knows that if you're a head coach and you have a bad start to your head coaching career with a good to great quarterback, you're gonna by default have multiple years to find yourself because you're just not gonna go 4-13 with a great quarterback. But if you don't have a quarterback, then you essentially only have you're already on your prove it year one because you have a real potential to go 3-14, find yourself at the number 2 pick, and then you already find yourself in a situation where the quarterback's on the board and the GM wants to find a coach to pair with that quarterback so they can kind of start building from scratch with those guys, and you're already out, and then you have to rebuild yourself as a coordinator for another 10 years. But for McDaniels, you can't even do that because you already played that card. So, but yeah, I think overall, I think it's a good hire. I would prefer for him to not call plays. I think he was a good play calling New England. He had his times where he was an elite play caller, I think, and he had his times where he was questionable. But overall, I think he was at least good. This year, I think he could have played a better year, but I think it was all right overall. Conservative at times, but I would prefer he doesn't call plays because I just prefer in general that head coaches don't call plays. That's just me personally. I think it's because Belichick is my head coach or whatever, so maybe that's why. But I just typically I prefer the head coaches who don't call plays. So I would prefer if he did.
Yeah. Yeah, and Derek Carr will be a free agent in 2023, so it's at least under contract for this year. Like I said, I think he'll stay for this year. But he could be in like a Jimmy G situation where it's like even if the team gets to the playoffs and has a good year, or he has a good year, they'll probably move on from him. He'll be 30. He's 30 years old right now, so he'll be 32 when his contract's up. So I would expect him to move on after that. But so yeah, it's a question. I mean, if you don't have a replacement plan for him, then you're kind of stuck in year 2. You don't have a quarterback with like a decent roster. You definitely have pieces on that roster, and you're definitely playoff contender ability, depending on who the quarterback is. So it's a question. But we'll see whether it's this year or next year if they move on or whatever they do with him. But that was the Raiders hire. The Giants, like I said, hired Brian Dable. I obviously the connections there with the GM. He's obviously from the Bills, has been there for a couple years or whatever. So it makes sense for sure. But someone who's that hot of a candidate after last year and then this year, I feel like you got to go to a team with a quarterback. You're going to a team right now that doesn't have a quarterback for the future, and you're most likely not drafting one this year, and you're not getting Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or whatever. So what exactly do you have at quarterback? I think that's a extremely huge question for him. Clearly, he took the job, so obviously he's ready for it. But for someone like that, if this is like an older head coach or more experienced guy, you could take a job like this because the team with the quarterback's probably not looking for you to be their head coach. But like someone like Dable, a younger guy, obviously worked with Allen, turned him into the guy that he is. You would expect him to go to a job where they have a quarterback, ready right now, a rookie contract, a superstar quarterback, whatever it is. So definitely surprising that he did take it, but clearly the connection, with the GM, being close to Buffalo, obviously, I think it probably helps as well. But I think it's a good hire for the Giants. I'm just surprised that Dable actually took this job, though. To be fair.
I'm slightly surprised. I mean, I think we both know the reason why this job is appealing, and it's not related to on the field. It's not related to the organization. It is just the fact that it is a New York football team. It's the Giants. They're a prestigious organization because they're from New York. They have some pretty cool back history, whatever you want to call it, history, backstory. But on the field, it's been a disaster. I mean, Saquon, well, not a bust, is pretty much a bust because of the position he plays. The offensive line is atrocious. The free agency signings have all flopped. Gettleman left this place as a disaster. I mean, Daboll's essentially walking into a room that is just a disaster. It looks like a bomb hit it. That's this team right now. You have no clear direction organizationally where this team wants to go, so he's gonna have to figure it out. And hopefully that chemistry with the GM works out. But you got to find your quarterback, and you got to find him quickly. This team has shown the capability and the willingness to fire coaches after only 2 years. So pretty much you got 2 years to figure something out. And I think they're going to be hesitant to fire like a fourth coach for in a row after only 2 years. But I mean, if Daboll doesn't find at least something to kind of cling on to, and be like, here, I got you this. Now don't fire me. I think it will be 2 years and done. So I think he's got to find something, whether it's in the draft or free agency, or a good quarterback, a promising quarterback, or a quarterback that can just hold it down, be a bridge. You need something. You can't go into next year with Jones as your starter and just hoping that somehow Galladay becomes the guy you actually wanted him to be when you signed him to that big contract. You need something. I don't know what it's going to be. Hopefully you have a plan. But it is surprising to me that Daboll would take this job because he could have realistically held out, been the coordinator again for the Bills. They're probably the 1 seed or the 2 seed or the 3 seed again. And then, next year, you have your choice of whichever head coaching job you want. And I think he could have done that for the next 2 to 3 years and eventually found somebody with a really good quarterback. But you take this job because it's a New York job. So I get it. At the same time, I don't. But overall, I think it's a good hiring for the Giants themselves. But for Daboll, I don't know. I think it's a huge risk. But if he's that guy, it'll pay off. So
Yeah, and again, this offseason draft is huge because they're not going to do anything in free agency. They have no money, but they have 5 picks inside the first 81 picks, and obviously 2 of those are inside the top 7. So huge draft. You have to hit on. Obviously, you're not going to hit every player, but you need to hit at least a couple of these guys. You need a guy to turn into a all-pro Pro Bowler. You need a couple like really good, solid guys on defense or offense. So just some solid guys, even not Pro Bowlers. Like you just need to hit on this draft because it's huge. If you don't hit on this draft, again, you're not going to improve your team in free agency. It's already not that good of a team, anyways. So you're probably looking at a down year, even if they really hit on this draft, unless they get like a Micah Parsons or someone that just can transform one side of the ball.
yeah, like a
Like
super
the
overrated like pass rusher you're talking about. Yeah.
what?
No, I'm
Super
kidding.
overrated pass rusher?
No, I'm kidding. No, that would be the type of guy they need. I would agree with that. I
Yeah.
just wanted
So
to
and
make a joke, but
yeah. I mean, obviously not true, but if they were to do that, even then, like I still don't really see this team winning. I mean, maybe they could win 5 or 6 games. If they do get someone like that, but again, you have to get someone like that, and you need your quarterback to play well, which it just probably won't be the case. Even with Dable, even with him there, it just probably won't be the case. So. And you also need to stay healthy. Galladay has to stay healthy. Saquon has to stay healthy. Your offensive line too. So many questions there. I think this is more of a year 2 thing. When you move past Daniel Jones, what do you do then? So I think this first year is for sure going to be a tough year. But we'll see. We'll see in the second year because Daniel Jones is for sure gone after this year.
now the one saving grace about this job is the fact that it's in the NFC East and it is I think it right now is the worst division of football. The Cowboys are obviously a good team. Are they a great team? I don't know. I mean, I think you would probably say yes. I would probably debate it. I don't know. I think they could be. I think they might not be. This year, they probably weren't a great team, even though maybe that's what we thought. I think it showed they were just a good team. I don't know. Maybe they were a great team. Who knows? But it's no secret that, the football team is just not there right now, and the Eagles are not there right now. And the Cowboys can be at least beaten or at least competed with. So I think that's the one saving grace about this job is that you don't need to have everything ready to go, but you do. I would agree in the draft. I mean, you get 2 picks inside of the top 7. You got to hit at least one. If you hit 0, I think you're in. Dayball might be gone after 2 years again. But you got to hit 1, and then you got the rest of the 3 picks in the top 81. You got to hit on at least 2. I think you got to hit at least 2. If you only hit on 1, that 1 has to be Darius Leonard. But if it's not, then you got to hit on 2 of those. So yeah.
And the good thing about this draft is that it's not a quarterback heavy draft. So there's going to be tons of players at multiple different positions that you could draft. This is a perfect draft for a team that knows that their quarterback is going to be Daniel Jones. They know they're going to move away from him, but you can't do it this year. So you can build all the other foundations of the team, the D line, O line, the secondary, the linebackers. You could fill all those needs now, and then for next year you could fill your bigger needs, which is a quarterback, maybe another offensive lineman, maybe another weapon as well. So this is a perfect draft for them to hit on, but like you said, they have to hit on the draft because then it won't matter.
It also makes me wonder, does Dayball know something we don't? About the quarterback position? AKA, is Wilson in the play? Do you have a shot at Russell Wilson? Do you have a shot at Watson? Do you have a shot at, I don't know, maybe you have a shot at Derek Carr if Derek Carr looks, if the Raiders trade for Watson. Obviously, Carr is going to be gone. So maybe you have a shot at Derek Carr. Maybe you have a shot at somebody. But to me, if you go into next season only having Daniel Jones, essentially, that's such a bad look. I mean, I'm not telling you should draft a quarterback this year, but I would be very demoralized as a Giants fan to only have Jones for next year.
I think what they'll probably do is just have a really solid backup so that when Jones struggles or gets injured, which has been the case for his career, you go to that solid backup he was not really that much of a step down, or if anything, a step down. So I think that's what they'll probably do. Maybe they draft a guy and maybe that he could be their backup. I think they'd probably go with an experienced guy. But, if you're the Giants, are you really even looking at, even though it's a Russell Wilson or whatever, are you really looking to try and get Russell Wilson here? Because even though he's obviously a huge upgrade, is your team ready to compete? That means you have to hit on this draft, which, again, you don't know until they get on the field. Then you need Wilson to come here. You need him. I feel like the Broncos, they're the perfect team to do that because they have the team ready. They just need the quarterback. But the Giants, let's say Russell Wilson is on the team, and it's basically the same team going into next year. I still don't think they're that good. I mean, maybe they win a couple more games this year of Russell Wilson, but you're not that much better than you were the year before. You still have problems on your O line. You still Saquon's injuries, Kelly Galladay's injuries. You still have problems on your defense as well. So I don't know if that really does anything, to be honest. Obviously, it's an upgrade, but I don't know exactly what that does for your team. I feel like that speeds your process up more than you'd want it to. I feel like you want to take this slow. Because you have the time. You have a new GM and a new coach. I feel like you should take this slow and not try to rush anything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a shot at Russell Wilson, you take it no matter what. I just think he's that guy. Are you ready to compete right now this season? No, but I think you're ready to build a path to compete. And I think with Russell Wilson and a couple good draft picks, even if they're not home runs, that's good enough to build some promise, and that's good enough to have something to build on. I just think that if you go on to next season with Daniel Jones, you're almost wasting Brian Daboll. You're not wasting him necessarily, but he's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer. You're not whispering at Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is deaf, so I don't know what to tell you. I think you need something. And then the good backup, I don't know why you I would rather have a good backup than nobody, obviously, but I just don't see what that does for this team. Because again, you're not trying to win right now. If Daniel Jones is injured, I don't know. Do I really care about the backup? I don't know. It doesn't help me in the future. It doesn't really help me right now. It's just kind of whatever.
Well, I think the good backup is more. And I think Dable. I think they're going to give ownership's going to give Dable as I don't think unless he just completely loses the locker room and he does stuff that kills his own job. I don't think he's going to be fired after 2 years. Obviously, if they're not winning games, obviously, but if they're at least like winning a couple of games and it's still not major improvement, like I don't think they'd fire him after 2 years. I think they will give him 3 or 4 years. Because they've gone through so many coaches in 2 years, you have to give someone a chance. And again, unless they kill themselves. But I think having a good backup quarterback can at least like it's not like you go like this year where you have Mike Lennon and you literally have zero chance of winning a game. At least you give yourself a chance of winning the game. Guys are like have positive mindsets. At least you're not losing the locker rooms. You're losing games. So I think that would be the reason more so. Because again, you're not going to win the division or even make the playoffs this upcoming year if Daniel Jones is your quarterback or whoever your backup is. You just won't. So I think it's more just to keep everyone level headed and to make sure the locker room doesn't get lost from you. To be honest.
I will say I love Mike Glennon. No, I don't actually love Mike Glennon. He's so bad. I cannot believe Mike Glennon got that contract he did in Chicago, right? I believe it was Chicago.
Yeah.
That's just mind blowing to me. But anyways, yeah. I mean, I guess you're right in the backup quarterback. I don't know. To me, I want something for the future. I still think Russell Wilson can be something for the future and the present. I'm not saying draft a quarterback. If you don't like a quarterback, then you don't draft a quarterback. That's just is what it is. But
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, though, that's the head coaching hires. That's unless we're missing anybody. I think we talked about everybody else though before this episode.
Yeah.
That's that. So conference championship games. That's the head coaching hires. We'll be back probably pretty soon. Are we going to talk about the Pro Bowl? I hope not, but maybe I changed my mind on that, and maybe there's something exciting in the Pro Bowl to talk about. But I don't think either. I don't think anybody's like a Pro Bowl type of guy. If you're a Pro Bowl type of guy, then you're not a type of guy that I want to be around ever. But I think it's going to be a lot of Super Bowl talk. I think it's going to be a super exciting Super Bowl, even though it's not the best matchup ever. It's a Super Bowl. And, if you're a football fan, that's what you kind of live for every single year. Basketball talk. There's a lot of basketball talk to talk about. We're more than halfway through the season. A lot of stuff we can talk about. We'll probably bring that stuff up during this kind of like 2-week break that we have almost. Spring training is just around the corner as well. So,
Well, it's technically not because they're in a lockout, but yeah.
okay, fine. I guess it's technically not around the corner, but baseball itself is around the corner. I know there's a lockout, but
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
I think it'll be around the corner. It should be around the corner. And whether or not we actually get games soon, let's be honest. I mean, games 5 through 80, while you can throw them on the TV, they're not that exciting. So if we lose some baseball games, I'm not going to cry myself to sleep over it. So it is what it is. So
Yeah.
anyways, we'll be back probably in the next few days. So check out social media is everything. We are still rebranding. I had some trouble with being able to change everything on the main YouTube channel and the Clips channel. So I don't know when that's gonna be a change. It should be in the next couple of days. I ended up emailing YouTube customer support. I don't even know if they've responded to me yet, but hopefully, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know. But anyways, everything should be brand new, cool stuff when you're watching this video, hopefully. So, but we'll be back within the next couple days. Goodbye.